So this is the agenda for the webinar, and today we'll basically start with the refresher for all the 6 domains for the CCSP. First of all, I'll give you an overview on the examination part. Then I will talk about a quick refresher on the all 6 CCSP domains. Like we'll go through every domain topic by topic with a simple overview, and I'll also explain the key topics you have to keep in mind, some key concepts you have to understand for the examination perspective. Then tomorrow we'll continue the same discussion. Plus, we'll also discuss some more questions which can help you for the setting the examination mindset and some key points we have to keep in mind while reviewing the questions and examination. Okay, that's a plan we are having. So let's begin. So, team, as everyone here know, the CCSP is a certification by a body called as IC Square. So I don't have to explain that in much more detail because I hope most of the people here have heard about this and you're already aware of this. So this particular certification is by a body called as IC Square, that is the International Information System Security Certification Consortium. So this is based, the CCSP is one of the pioneer certifications in the market on cloud governance, cloud management and all, cloud security management and all. So the CCSP is the primary point, the primary thing which we have to keep in mind when you prepare for the CCSP is your mindset. Okay. So whatever we are discussing from now on, whatever we are going to discuss further, do not think about any one cloud service provider. So whatever things we are going to discuss further on this particular webinar today and tomorrow is completely all about the uh, a generic concept, and we are not referring to any cloud service provider. I will talk about the mindset and all in a few minutes. So first of all, team, as for CCSP, as per all of you know, the CCSP is basically having total 6 domains. Unlike CISSP, CCSP is basically having total 6 domains you have to complete. Starting from the domain 1, the cloud concepts, architecture and design, to the data security domain, to the cloud platform and infra security, to cloud application security, cloud security operations, and legal risk and compliance. We have total 6 domains we have to prepare for the CCSP examination. So there are some key points I want to tell you. So the first point I want to tell you is that, team, whenever you are preparing for the CCSP examination, I have seen that most people look into this particular thing called as a weightage. Okay, I'm just sharing my thought process and my experience with, like, working with these kind of things. So when talking about this weightage of the domains, I would say that whenever you are preparing for the examination, please do not think about this. I don't want you to think about this. The reason is because when you basically go for the CCSP examination, if you have already done some examinations from IC Square, you will already know that these exams are not just like they will simply ask you a question and just some like what is this or what is that, and give you some simple choices. Not like that. They will give you a lot of complex scenarios. The almost like 80% questions what from the feedbacks which we have received is scenarios, and a bit very confusing questions. And it is not from one single domain. Like for example, let's say you get a question on something called as a, let's say, multi-tenancy. So it may be coming from the domain 1. The same concept is applicable for domain 2 as well. The same concept is applicable for domain 4 as well. So what I'm trying to say is that whichever concepts which you are getting this examination is spread across multiple domains. So it's no point we are referring to the weightage of the domains. So instead of referring to the weightage of domains, you have to focus on the concepts in a thorough manner. That's the most important point we have to keep in mind. Okay, that's the first point we have to keep in mind. Do not look into the examination weightage, but be clear with every topic, because I have seen some people ask me a question that, Krish, can I prepare for this domain called as legal risk and compliance? Can I spend less time for preparing for this domain? So even though this domain is a very small thing, but again, people ask me, Krish, can I prepare for this domain with like hardly in 1 hour or 2 hour? So what I'm trying to say is that you should give the same importance to this domain like the same way you give it for every domain. The reason is because, as I told you before, this is not something which is specific to one domain. Questions can be coming from multiple domains. That's a most important point we have to keep in mind. Okay, so to conclude, the examination is having total six domains, and you have to give a proper priority for all the domains and not just focus on only one domain. Because I have seen some people, because when you say the first domain, they will feel the domain one is so simple, and I don't have to review the domain. I don't have to worry about that much. But actually, the entire topics in CCSP, the entire domains in CCSP is based on that domain one. So you should be very clear with that domain as well. So every domain is having its own critical importance, and you should make sure you go through it very thoroughly. That's a most important first point to understand. The second thing is the team for the examination perspective. The exam, this is the exam information which we're having. So basically, the exam is currently 3 hours. That is 180 minutes. This exam is currently 3 hours. And you will get 125 multiple choice questions. Okay, in this exam you will get 125 multiple choice questions. Maybe like drag and drop will be there, but mostly almost everything will be multiple choice questions. Out of this 125 questions, 100 questions is basically where you get the actual score. This is basically where you get the actual score. And 25 questions is basically for research purposes, and it is not scored. You will not get any score for 20 questions. You will get scored only for the 100 questions. But you will not be able to recognize which one is the real question or which one is the unscored question. You will basically has to answer all the 125 questions. This is not something which is basically similar to CISSP, where you have a CAT based format. Here you have to answer all the 125 questions. Most important. Okay. You have to finish all the questions, then click on submit. Got a team? Perfect. Okay. That's a very important thing. Then so the passing score for this examination is basically 700 out of 1000. You have to basically get 700 out of 1000 if you basically want to pass the examination. But now when you say that you want to, the passing score is 700, the reality is that when you write an IC square examination, you will never be able to see your score. They will show you either you have passed or they will show you either you have failed. They will never show you the score actually. If you pass, they will simply tell you, congratulations, you have success provisionally passed the CCSP examination. If you fail the exam, they will show you which all domains you were weaker. That's all. But you will never be able to see your score. Okay, that's the second point we have to keep in mind. The third most important point is that when you write this examination, when you so now there is a peace of mind offer running. That means as of now, while we are taking this webinar, there is a peace of mind offer running, which is basically there with the IC square will basically give you one more attempt. Or you can basically, if you when you book the exam, if you also purchase the peace of mind voucher, they will give you one more exam attempt. And one benefit we got from this is that team, previously normally what they do previously what they normally do is that you purchase a voucher. Okay, you purchase a voucher and with the peace of mind, and they will tell you when within what time you have to write the, or what date you have to write the exam, and within what date you have to write the exam if you second exam if you fail the first exam, like that. They will tell you some timelines, but as of now they are saying they are not giving any timelines here as of now. So you have to purchase the voucher. So only thing they are telling you is that once you purchase the voucher with peace of mind offer, you have to write the exam within 180 days. This is a very good offer they have given us. That means now you purchase the voucher and you have to give both the exams if needed, second exam. But again, you have to write the exams within 180 days. So now, for example, let's say I bought this voucher and almost like 6 months I'll get right. So I'll be able to write the exam within 6 months. And just in case if I fail the exam, I can write the exam one more time within means exactly after 30 days of waiting period. It's completely fine. Okay. That is basically what we call as a peace of mind offer. This is currently running and it is a very good offer just in case if you have some confusions or stressful about the examination preparation. But I'm not recommending you think about this. More than thinking about this, you should basically focus on your exam preparation journey. That's very important. Even for my candidates also, there is a very less number of people, super less number of people needed to go for that. Almost 98% people were able to clear the examination without this peace of mind offer itself. Okay, perfect. And you can write the examination only from a Pearson VU testing center. Like normally, if you go for some other examinations, you will be able to write the exam without any, like, you can directly go for the examination to any testing center, any Pearson VU testing center, or you can write from the home as well. But for IC square examination, especially CCSP, CISSP, etc., you can write the exam only from a IC square authorized exam center, and you cannot write it from home or something. Okay, that's a very important thing. This is regarding the examination part, team. Now, team, so the next thing is that, okay, so this is a currently, this exam is basically what I will tell you, I will tell you what I felt about this examination for a long time. This is what I am always saying in all the sessions, but I will tell you the most important factor when you write this examination, team, is your mindset. Okay, mindset. So I will tell you some points we have to keep in mind when you're preparing for when you start preparing for the examination. So whenever you start preparing for the examination, the first and the most important thing you have to do is that don't bias to any provider. That means if you are a AWS person, or if you are an Azure person, or Cloud Platform, or Oracle Cloud Platform, whatever it is, please keep all those things away, because this exam is not specific to any vendor. That means any question coming in this examination, or any topics you're preparing this examination, is talking about the generic cloud security concepts, and never focusing on the cloud service providers. So always keep in mind, this exam is not about a cloud service provider specifically. It is a generic concepts which is applicable for all the providers. That means, like, maybe if you are a AWS person, you will say that, Krish, in AWS we are doing it in different way. In Azure we are doing it in a different way. Google we so it's like that. So don't focus on that particular perspective. Do not focus on one cloud service provider. The second most important thing is that, team, when you basically go for this examination, you have to have proper patience for reading the question. The one most important thing you're having is the time management. Okay, in this examination, the most important thing you should have is the time management. Okay, like, what is that actually? So you have a 180 minutes and you have to finish 125 questions, right? So obviously you need to have a proper time management, because, like, recently I done this AIGP examination from this IAPP. So actually it was one thing I liked about the exam was, you start the examination, in the middle of the examination they will give you a 15 minutes break. Okay, you start writing the examination, and then they give you a 15 minutes break, and then you have to continue the exam. So, like that, I would always recommend, when you write the CCSP examination, you should basically take some small breaks in between. Not like you cannot move away from the screen or camera. You have to be there, but you can just sit calmly for some time. Taking a proper break and managing your time efficiently is a very important thing while writing the examination. Because I have seen some people tell me, Krish, I have cracked the exam with just 2 hours. I was able to clear the exam within 2 hours and 15 minutes, like that. But what I always feel when I get that particular kind of response is the, team, that is a huge risk that person took actually. Whenever you write the examination, even if you feel the questions are very simple or whatever, you should use the time efficiently. You should review the question one more time, because maybe just in case, due to any reason, if you missed one single word like except, best, first, least, highest, most, if you miss those kind of words in the question, the entire choice can be wrong, and you will basically, end up missing a lot of things. So I would recommend that you utilize the time efficiently. Like, maybe, like, for example, let's say you do a first 50 questions in the examination, then take a break for 10 minutes. Okay. Like, I'm not saying that you have to go away, just sit there for 10 minutes and sit peacefully. Then again, write the next 50 questions. Then take a 5-10 minutes break. Then write the next 25 questions. Like, you have to slowly approach the question, and you have to practice the question. You have to spend 1 minute for one question. What I recommend is that you have to spend 1 minute for one question. And normally, one query which I always get is, Krish, you said that the exam is basically maybe scenario-based questions will be there. So do you think that this particular questions will be way much huge or something? So it's not about huge, it's about your mindset. If you completely prepare the proper topics as per the CCSP body of knowledge, then definitely you will be able to answer the questions properly. So you have to use your time efficiently. That's the most important point I have to tell you on this. And one more thing, there is no option for going back. That means now you let's say for example, you wrote the you like now you this is your exam screen, you have a question here, and you have option to go to next. But once you click next, you can't go back to the previous question, or you can't mark for review. There is no option for marking for review, or there is no option for going back. Okay, so manage your time efficiently. So most important thing, first thing is that never think about any cloud service provider perspective here, because you are not specifically working for one single cloud service provider. Okay, in this exam is not about your provider. Second thing is that always utilize your time completely and efficiently. Use your time completely sufficiently. That's a very important thing to understand. And how to use it? Continuous practice. The third thing is that when you basically see some questions in this examination, or maybe while preparing for the examination, when you read some concepts or practice questions from IC square and all, you will see that there is a lot of things which is not matching with your business ideas. Like for example, when I discuss some concepts in my training, I have seen many people tell me that, Krish, in my company it's not like that, this is not right, in my company it's different, in my company we are doing it different way. As I always say, team, this exam is not about your company, or this exam is not about uh, you know your perspective. This is completely about a generic approach. This is not about one single country. This is not about one single law, or this is not about one single uh, country. So always keep in mind this is a generic thing. Okay, if you basically have these points in your mind, plus, if you go through the concepts clearly, if you have a understanding of concepts, instead of just memorizing the concepts from your textbook, if you have a complete understanding of the concepts of which you have to understand, then definitely this exam will be way much easier for you. Even within last few 3 4 last 3 4 days, I got almost like 5 CCSPs who cleared the exam. And the interesting part is that some three people told me, Chris, the exam was very easy, and the same time, some two people told me that the exam was very tough and challenging, but luckily I cleared the exam. So it's all about how you prepare, and it's all about how much time you spend for getting the concepts in your mind. So it will take some time. So all you have to do is that prepare well for this examination. Okay. So now we'll deep dive into the topics one by one on each domain. Now, team, let's go to one by one of the domains. So, team, one more thing to keep in mind when talking about the domain one. Okay, the first domain, like the or any domains when talking about the CCSP examination, one thing is that uh, like certain areas are most important because certain areas are most critical or most challenging when you go to a cloud platform. So you may expect a lot of things, a lot of queries or questions coming from that. So I will stress out the every topics. I will review every topics in this particular webinar, but I will focus on certain topics which I will feel that which is most important we have to understand. Okay. Perfect. So the first domain of the CCSP examination is cloud concepts, architecture, and design. So this domain called as cloud concepts, architecture, and design, I would say that this is the foundation domain for everything you're learning in CCSP. Now, for example, you want to learn about the domain 2 called as data security. You want to learn about the domain 4 called as application security. You want to learn about the domain called as cloud infra security. You want to learn about the domain called as cloud security, cloud legal risk and compliance, cloud security operations. So all those things are based on the how strong you have learned this particular concepts in the domain 1. If you learn this domain 1 in a proper manner, if you have get the concepts in the right way, 100% you will be able to uh, you know get other topics in a most easiest way. And the second point is that until unless we specifically say that whatever topics we are discussing in CCSP is from your business perspective, until unless the question says otherwise, or until unless we say otherwise, whenever you basically go for a topic in the examination part also, or learning also, understand that you are thinking about your perspective, your business perspective, because you're not biased to a cloud service provider or working for a provider. You are currently working for your organization. So everything is basically regarding that particular thing only. So we'll dig into the first domain now. So team, the first module of the domain 1 is basically what we call as understanding the cloud computing concepts. So obviously, when you talk about learning the cloud computing concepts, the first important thing is that you should be aware of the key terminologies you have to understand for the cloud computing. Like when you talk about cloud computing, there are multiple terminology like services, right? So cloud is basically something which you are getting in the form of services. So basically you have to understand the name called as services. The second most important thing when talking about the second most important thing, if you want to say something as a cloud platform, what is the difference when you say there is a virtualized infrastructure and when you say there is a cloud computing? When you talk about the word called as a on-premises data center and when you talk about a word called as a AWS cloud or Azure cloud or a cloud platform, do you know what is a major difference? Automation. I would say that automation. That means if you basically go to the on-premises data center, what is happening there? You have to basically do things manually. So for example, let's say if I want to provision a VM or if I want to do something, I have to wait for a person to do it for me in the on-premises. But if you go to a cloud platform, when you basically go to a cloud platform, you have a massive amount of automation. Everything is automated. Do you have to basically do a call or do you have to call the cloud service provider employee and tell him that you have to create a VM there or you have to delete something there, you have to do something there? No, right? There is no need of telling anyone that you have to do this or do that. Why? Because the cloud is entirely automated and we call it as orchestration. This is a very important thing which we have to keep in mind. Okay, orchestration. That means when you basically go to a cloud platform, the entire cloud is completely orchestrated, a multiple series of automation. So don't, that's a most important thing. So first of all, you have to learn about the cloud computing and understand that cloud is delivering you everything in the form of services. Second point to keep in mind, the entire cloud have a complete orchestration. Because the cloud is orchestrated, whatever activities happening in the cloud platform, it is basically done via this series of automation called as orchestration. You don't have to wait for a cloud service provider employee. Okay, that's the first thing to understand. Now, again, now you have to understand how this cloud is going to give value for your business. Most importantly, okay, you have to understand how the cloud is giving you value. Like for example, let's say what are the because this is, I'm not saying that this is basically for the exam only, but this is basically very important for your exam preparation plus your learning as well. So most important thing, the team, you should know that what is the benefit you get from cloud computing. It's not just about the advantages I'm saying or characters I'm saying that what is the reason why we go to cloud, like this agility or maybe like the scalability or your business adaptability. So for whatever reasons why we are going to cloud, you should basically be aware of the reason why we are going to a cloud platform. That's a very important thing to keep in mind. Okay, these are the foundation things you have to learn first. So first of all, you'll start with what is cloud computing and the cloud offering everything your services. Then you learn about the concept of cloud orchestration automation. Then you have to basically understand how this communication works. That's a good thing for sure. Then you have to understand that what are the perks of going to cloud computing. Even though we have a on premises, what is the benefit of going to cloud? That is a most important, also a very important thing you have to understand. Okay, that's the first thing. Now the second thing you have to learn is that, team, when you basically go to cloud computing, you have to understand the key cloud computing characteristics. So when talking about the key cloud computing characteristics, okay, so as per the NIST, okay, as per the NIST, so National Institute of Standards and Technology, as per the NIST, they have a publication which is basically referring to 8 NIST 800 145. There is a document called which is from NIST called as NIST 800 145. So as per the NIST, they have defined what is the cloud computing and they have given some formal characteristics of cloud. This is the document actually. This is the very interesting document. Okay, so as per the NIST, they have given a very formal document which clearly mentions what are the characteristics of a cloud computing. So basically, if you want to say something as a cloud computing, they have mentioned about 5 characteristics. That is on-demand self-service, broad network access, resource pooling, rapid reliability, and measured service. You should be aware of each and every one of this. Very important. You should be aware of each and every one of this. So these five characteristics you have to be aware. So on-demand self-service means what? On-demand self-service means that you're able to provision anything without waiting for a person. So that's a very common property of cloud computing. You are able to utilize anything in the cloud computing without waiting for someone. The second property is basically broad network access, where you are able to access the cloud from different kind of devices. See, you are able to access your cloud from your laptop, your MacBook, your mobile phone, your Windows, your Linux, right? From different locations, right? Yeah, Farhan, go ahead. For saying something. The third thing is that team, you have something called as resource pooling. In fact, there is the resource pooling. No, see, Vijay, it is very important that we remember the names of standards. It's good. Like this is basically NIST 800 145. Like that, when you basically prepare for the examination, if you can make some list of standards or basically some keynotes like that, that would be helpful because maybe they will refer it in the exam. So it was very useful to you. Okay. Okay. Now, when you say the word called as resource pooling, what do you mean by that? That means this is the most important thing. So now the cloud is able to provide you, you are able to provision things in the cloud computing, and you're able to provision any amount of capacity you want. How is it possible? Because the entire cloud is having a pool of resources. They have a massive pool of CPU, memory, storage, network, which is called as a compute pool, right? The cloud is basically having a pool of resources called as compute pool, storage pool, and network pool. So this pool is based from where the customer, the cloud provider is able to provide you this. And while discussing this, you should be aware of one concept. The entire cloud is relying on a concept called as virtualization. I repeat, the entire cloud is relying on a concept called as virtualization. So because the entire cloud is relying on a concept called as virtualization, that's the reason why you are able to have this pool of computers there. Then you are able to utilize them all together. We call it as abstraction. Okay. Then you have to learn about the concept of rapid elasticity. That means when you talk about the cloud computing, you are able to provision things whenever you want. You're able to create things, you're able to modify things, you're able to update things, you're able to remove things. All these things you're able to do because the cloud is having a capability called as a elasticity. That's a by default capability which is given by the virtualization. So that's also very important for you to understand. Then finally, we have a word called as measured service, also called as metered service. What is this measured service or metered service team? Measured service means that you have a pay as you go model. You are only paying for what we are utilizing. Like this, we have total five characters of cloud computing. It's very important. I mean, yep, you have a six character cloud computer, which is very important for you to understand. Okay. Actually, the reason why I put six here is because team, as per the NIST, you have a five characteristics only. But if you basically go for as per the ISO standard, you have a six characters. That's completely fine. But understand that as per the NIST, you have only five characteristics called as on-demand self-service, broad network access, rapid elasticity, resource pooling, and measured service. Okay. When you basically learn about the benefits of cloud computing and the cloud computing characteristics, you have to be also aware of the challenges of cloud computing. Don't forget, you have to be also aware of the concept, the challenges in cloud computing. What are the challenges you have in cloud computing team? So the challenge, when talking about the challenges in cloud computing, I would say that one primary challenge, if somebody asks you what is the primary challenge in cloud computing, the answer should be always multi-tenancy. That means what? The primary challenge in cloud computing is basically multi-tenancy. So you may feel, Krish, in textbook or in other materials, I have seen that multi-tenancy is added as a benefit of cloud computing. They have just added multi-tenancy as a characteristics, not the benefits. Okay, so that means the cloud service provider is using the same underlying hardware. Okay, the cloud service provider is using the same underlying hardware to basically add provision multiple customers data or multiple customer VMs. So what is the problem there, team? This is a logical separation, right? This is a logical separation. So because we have a logical separation here, what is the biggest problem we are having? Just in case, if this separation breaks, what will happen? The data is basically compromised. So because of that reason, it's a very important thing to understand that one major challenge in cloud computing is multi-tenancy. Also, you have to understand the challenges called as, uh, you know, uh, location of data residency. Then you have to understand the challenge of data sovereignty. Like this, there is a multiple challenges we have when you go to cloud computing. Okay, so primary challenge is basically multi-tenancy. Then you have challenges like third party call as a you have a cloud service provider who is a third party. That's another challenge. You are allowing a third party to access your data. That's a second challenge you're having. Then you have challenges regarding location of data. Like that, you have multiple challenges. So it's a very important thing that, yeah, obviously control over data is a very important problem. Like this, we have different challenges we have when you basically go to cloud computing. The same way you learn the benefits, you should also learn the challenges as well, because here you should basically focus on more challenges. Okay, very important for us to understand. So the next one, so once we basically understand these concepts, team, the next one which we have to keep in mind is that you should be aware of the roles in cloud computing. What is a roles in cloud computing, team? Roles in the sense means, now normally what people believe is that, now see, in the cloud you may have heard this word called as shared responsibility model. Right, you have heard about the word called a shared responsibility model or shared security responsibility model. So when talking about the word called as a shared responsibility model or shared security responsibility model, understand that previously we used to say that we have a cloud service provider, we have a cloud service provider, we have a cloud service consumer. Simple. We believe that we have a cloud service provider and we have a cloud service consumer. And we are having a, so the provider is having some responsibility and consumer is having some responsibility. But in the modern scenarios, more than just having the cloud service provider and cloud service consumer, we have multiple more entities. Okay. More than basically thinking about we have multiple more entities there than just thinking about the provider and consumer, and that is the cloud service, uh, cloud service broker, cloud service partner, cloud service regulator, cloud service auditor, etc. Carrier X. So what do you mean by that, team? For example, let's say if you basically go for a cloud service broker, what do you mean by cloud service broker? So for example, let's say you have a multi. So let's say for example, you go to an organization where you have multiple cloud service providers. It's a very common scenario nowadays that whenever you go to modern enterprise architectures, sorry, you go to modern enterprise architectures, you may have multiple cloud service providers used in your company. Like for example, in multiple companies I have basically consulted and supported for till now, I have seen that many companies use a multi-cloud architecture. Okay, multi-cloud architecture. That means for multiple reasons, they use a different cloud service providers altogether. So when you basically have multiple cloud service providers and multiple accounts in multiple cloud service providers, the biggest challenge you're having is that these cloud service providers which we are having, how do I get the visibility over them? How do I ensure that I can basically focus on them? How can I basically have a proper visibility over them? So for that, to get a proper visibility on the cloud service providers, to make sure that we are able to have a proper control or visibility over the cloud services, we can use another third party called as a cloud service broker or CSB. Cloud broker is a very common thing, even though it's increasing the risk, but it's a very common thing that we use a cloud service broker who act as an intermediary between your between the cloud service customer and the cloud service provider. Like again, it helps us to manage the complexity, like to help us to aggregate and integrate cloud service from different providers, to customize the services to from different vendors together, to basically help us to compare the services properly. Like they will give you multiple benefits. That's the reason we go for a cloud service broker. And we have a specialized broker called as CASB as well, which is one of the most important topic for CCSP. You have to learn about the concept of a CASB as well, Cloud Access Security Broker. So the next one, other than this broker, is basically what we call as a cloud service partner. Who is a cloud service partner, team? Cloud service partner means that so it's an organization that will help, that will collaborate with the cloud providers to enhance their offerings. Like for example, let's say now there is a cloud service provider. My company will partner with the provider, and what we will do, we'll basically make that services more flexible, or more reachable to the various kind of customers, and help them to uh, you know mm, deliver the services more efficiently. That's a very common thing, which is called as a cloud service partner is there. Then we have something called as a cloud service carrier, the one who provides the connectivity. Then we have a regulator. So all these are very important, especially when you go for the CCSP examination. You should be clear with the concept of CASB. CASB is a very important topic you will find in multiple domains. So CASB is a very important topic you have to learn, or cloud broker and CASB is very important. Also, you should be aware of the concept of the shared security responsibility model. That's most important thing to understand. Okay. And also, it's very important for us to learn the key characters of cloud computing. Okay. Like that. And finally, in this particular first module, you have a building block. What is a building block technology? Now, yeah, definitely, team, I'll give you time to ask your doubts after this particular slide. Okay, for sure. So, team, the next one is basically the building block technologies. What is a building block technology? It means that now let's say, sorry. Now let's say you are saying something as a cloud platform. What makes the cloud? Okay, now I want cloud, Krish, I want cloud. I'm getting AWS, I'm getting Azure, I'm getting Google Cloud Platform. But what makes this cloud? You say the word cloud, but what makes it? In the sense means what? What makes it means how the cloud is built, how it is delivered to you. So if the cloud should be there, you should basically have a sort lot of things like CPU, memory, storage, network, the orchestration layer, the virtualization. You have a lot of things should be there. So that is basically what we call as a building block tech. The technologies which basically build the cloud journey. Especially, you should learn about the concept of a hypervisor. You should be aware of the concept of a type 1 and type 2 hypervisor, which one is more secure, which one is least secure. Then you should be aware of the concept of why they are using the type 1 mostly in the cloud computing platforms like that. So this is the module 1 in the domain 1. The next module, or the next module in the domain 1, is basically what we call as, we are still in domain 1 team. Okay, the next module in domain 1 is basically where we talk about something called as a describe the cloud reference architecture. So when talking about describing the cloud reference architecture, so this is a very important thing. Okay, so what do you mean by this? So basically, you should be aware of the various cloud service models. Okay, now basically these two things talking about the delivery of services, actually, you should be aware of the cloud service models. Like for example, let's say when you go to a cloud platform, what are the ways that they deliver you cloud services? Like in the sense means now I go to a cloud service provider, I take a service. So how do I categorize a service? So I'm able to categorize service into three types. Okay, either it can be a IaaS service or PaaS service or SaaS service. It is very important that this topic can be very much tricky when you go for the examination, because you should be clear with the idea to make it with the example. So when you talk about the word called as infrastructure as service, okay, they are basically intended for providing you a proper infrastructure, and whatever things you build on top of it is up to you. And when you basically go for PaaS, it's not about the infrastructure, it's about the platform they are delivering to you. So understand that you should be clearly aware of the concept of a IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. That's the most important thing. Even though we have different other things you will hear, but primarily speaking, the primary things you have to keep in mind is that you have a IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS, and you should be very clear with the responsibility metrics in each of them, who will take care of each of them in a deeper. That's a very very important thing you have to learn, because for examination also, for your learning as well, for your further journey as well, this particular thing can be very important for you. So cloud service models is basically very important for you to understand. Again, that document I have shared with you on that chat, it contains the same thing. See, SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS. Okay, that's a very interesting thing you can basically go through. Okay. Now, when talking about the cloud service models, okay, one most important thing is that, team, as I told you, you should be aware that when you go for a SaaS platform, the only way you can talk to the cloud service provider is to have a SLAN contract. When you basically go for a SaaS platform, the only thing you can talk to the cloud service provider is to have a SLAN contract. So that's a very important thing. Then we have talk about something called as a cloud deployment model. What is a deployment model? So basically, how you are able to provision your cloud. Do we have to go to a public cloud platform like Amazon, Azure, etc., or do we have to build our own data center or our own cloud platform? Do we have to use a combination of things like hybrid cloud, or do we want to use, community cloud where we use cloud, different companies all together? So it's very important for you to learn the deployment models. So let me show you an example. I would give you a tip on this. So when you basically talk about the word called as deployment models, especially when talking about the point called as hybrid cloud, okay. So instead of learning about the theory of hybrid cloud, just learn some use cases. So some examples of how I can practically use a hybrid. Just understand how I can practically use a hybrid. That's a very important thing you can learn. Then in talking about private cloud, understand what is the benefits you get. Because when you say private cloud, it's in your control, right? As it is in your control, what is the benefit you get? As it is in your control, what is the benefit you get? You will be able to have a complete control over it. You will be able to manage it by yourself. You have a complete control over governance, etc. When you basically go for a public cloud, what is the problem? You have a third party called as a cloud service provider. You have to rely on the provider for a lot of stuff like that. So like this, you should be very clear with the concept of a cloud deployment models, because regardless of exam or anything, this is the fundamental concept of cloud, right? So it's very important. Again, security and usability concepts in both these particular things are very important for you to understand. The next topic called as shared considerations. This one I would say that this I have seen that this is not specific to one domain, because if you take the example of interoperability, this topic I have found in multiple domains. Let me give an example. For example, let's say now you go to a cloud platform. You want to see if something is compatible, or if the service or application or a format is compatible with multiple cloud service providers or multiple platforms. That's called as interoperability. Interoperability is the ability to communicate between two different platforms, two different vendors, two different applications to move and reuse there, like that. That's a interoperability. And portability is all about movement. If you are able to move from one provider to another, due to some reason, if you want to move from one provider to another, that's a portability. Understand what are the challenges you will face in portability. Vendor lock-in, it's called as vendor lock-in or provider lock-in. Like that, you have to understand the concept of vendor lock-in on the scenario which you will stuck with one provider. That's basically very important to learn. And how can I avoid that vendor lock-in? That's a very important concept is to understand. Then there is a new concept they have introduced in the exam version called as reversibility. What is reversibility? So now I'm going from a on-premises to cloud platform now, or maybe one cloud to another, or on-premise to cloud. Due to some reason, if I don't like it, I should be able to get back to my previous state. I should be get back able to get back to my previous scenarios. That's basically what we call as a reversibility. Okay, or I should be able to remove all my data from the previous vendor. All these things are part of reversibility. Then, then the most important thing you have to learn is about availability. Why it's the most important thing, availability? So availability in the sense means team availability means that now you are going for a cloud platform. Cloud provides you what? Cloud provides you services. And services, the most important concern is availability. So availability is basically making sure that the service is available to the authorized users on time. That's availability, right? So it's a very important factor. Understand the word of availability, and specifically high availability. That's the most important thing to understand. And next thing is that we have a word called a security. And so when talking about security, what do you mean by the team? Security means that you go for a cloud service provider called as Amazon or Azure or whatever it is. So whichever cloud providers you go for, data security and compliance will always remain as the responsibility of the cloud service consumer. So whichever clouds you go for, the data security and compliance is always responsibility of the cloud service customer or cloud service consumer. So security is a very important thing to understand. Then we have a word called as SLA. SLA means that whenever you talk about the word called as a minimum guarantee. If you want to get a minimum guarantee from the cloud service provider, or this is basically the minimum assurance I'm getting regarding the support, services, availability, and other factors, the minimum guarantee. That minimum guarantee is basically what we call as a SLA. And always keep in mind, SLA is something which is created by the cloud service provider. The CSP or the cloud service provider is the one who provides the SLA, the service level agreement. Then we have something called as a auditability. What is auditability, team? Auditability means that you go to a cloud platform called as Amazon. Okay, now or maybe Azure or anything. So how do I basically ensure that they are doing things properly? So how do I get assurance regarding how the cloud service provider is handling things properly? That is a problem, right? That's an auditability challenge. So you have to make sure that you should have an assurance regarding things. You should want to have a trust and transparency towards the cloud service provider. So auditability comes in picture there. And the regulatory and compliance standards you have to follow. That's a very important thing to understand. Yeah, now answering the doubt we're having from Harun, vendor lock-in. So team, the difference between vendor lock-in and vendor lockout is that vendor lock-in is basically when you are stuck with a provider due to some reason. If you are not able to move from one provider to another, that's a vendor lock-in. Okay, due to some reason, if you are not able to move from one provider to another, that is a vendor lock-in. But what is vendor lockout? Vendor lock out means that the provider itself leaves the business due to some reason. If the provider goes bankrupt or the provider is not able to provide you service, that is basically what we call as a vendor lockout. The provider leaves the business. The provider leaves the business. That is called as vendor lockout. Okay. Most important thing, the provider leaves the business. The provider exits the market. That's called as vendor lockout. Fine team. Then the next thing is basically more relevant nowadays. Even see, it's not just about the exam I'm talking. If you see, this is one of the most trending topics now for a long time, right? The AI/ML. So there is a lot of technologies now utilizing this cloud. So basically, when you go for cloud computing, previously we used to see very less number of services. But nowadays, what we see is that you see a lot of services basically when talking about cloud computing. Like you see a lot of AIML services, blockchain services, IoT services, container services. So how it can come in picture? So these things, why they are using cloud computing? In short, in short, you should better you can basically be aware of the concept of containers, DevSecOps, confidential computing. All these are very important for the preparation of the examination. So you should be clear with the concept of containers, AML, blockchain, confidential computing. So all these things are very relevant for the examination. But generally speaking, team, all these things rely on the scalable or the scalable computing capacity of the cloud service platform. Okay, the major benefit is that the cloud offers a pay-as-you-go model, and basically the cloud gives them a scalable capacity to process any amount of workloads, and they have a huge amount of storage capacity. So these are the main things offered by the cloud for these technologies. If you basically want to know more about the concept of containers and all, I have made a video on Docker long back. You can check on that Infosec YouTube channel. You'll be able to figure out that video. Okay, just search in the Infosec YouTube. You will find that video on Docker. So that will give you idea about containers. Okay. So, team, moving to the next topic, which is basically what we call as understanding the security concepts specific to or relevant to cloud computing. This is actually, again, very important. This is coming in multiple domains. This topic is coming in multiple domains because if you talk about this DevOps and DevSecOps, it's coming in another domain for sure. Domain 4 is again coming. Like the same way, if you basically go for this particular concept, it's very important because first thing is obviously domain 2 is all talking about this cryptography and key management. It's very, very important for you to understand the key management best practices in CCSP. Always keep in mind, team, if you want to prepare for the examination or basically for preparing for generically for CCSP, the key management is the most important thing because you should be aware why key management is a concern in cloud computing. Plus, where is the best location for storing the key file? Always keep in mind, store the key file outside the cloud service provider who is hosting the data. So it's a very important thing to make sure we should store the key file outside the cloud server. So key management is a very important thing. Different ways for managing key file, what is HSM device, all these things you have to know. That's a very important thing for sure. Then the next most important thing is basically what we call as a identity and access control. So now when you talk about the entire cloud, there are some multiple pillars you're having. And one major pillar of cloud computing is the IAM. If you talk about zero trust, if you talk about cloud computing, if you talk about anything in this perspective, the most important topic is IAM, identity and access management. Especially in cloud, it becomes more relevant. Why? Because cloud have a lot of new attack vectors. So basically, it's more relevant. You should be aware of the concept of authentication, authorization, accountability. Then you should be aware of the concept of what is a how do you multi-factor authentication. You should be able to aware of the concept of federation, etc. So all these things are basically very important for you to understand. Okay. Then when you talk about data in the cloud computing, the biggest challenge you're having is that data is basically stored in the cloud. Okay, data is basically stored in the cloud, and you don't have a guarantee that data can be properly removed. So, what is the best way to remove data in the cloud platform? So, when talking about removing data in the cloud platform, the most efficient and the best way is basically what we call as a crypto shredding. Don't forget, the most effective way in cloud computing for removing data in the cloud computing is what we call as crypto shredding, also called as cryptographic erasure. Okay. Okay, I repeat the point. Most important thing, when you basically go for the cloud computing perspective, the most efficient way you can basically talk to the or to a way you can remove the cloud computing is what or remove the data in cloud computing is called as a crypto shredding or cryptographic erasure or encryption erasure. Very important. Okay, that's one most important thing to understand. Then you have to understand the concept of network security. That means when you basically go to cloud computing, how this virtual network, basically in the cloud, network is also virtual, right? So how this network is basically virtualized. Like, what is a security group? It's a firewall, right? You should know about the concept of security group. You should know about the criticality of why traffic is inspected. What is zero trust and geofencing? Again, this is coming in domain 3 or then domain 5. So obviously, it's also very important there as well. Then from virtualization also you will get a lot of questions, maybe I expect, because that's the whole thing is about the about cloud. As I told you, you should learn about the concept of a hypervisor and containerization platforms. Type 1, type 2 is very important. Also, you should learn about the concept of serverless and ephemeral. What is ephemeral computing? Temporary, like that. Then the next one feels very simple, but I have seen some few questions on this team. For learning this topic called as common threat, you can use a document called as CSA Top Threats 2024. You can review a document called as CSA Top Threats to 2024. You will be able to get that from the internet. But that is a very good document because this common threats is talking about what? It's about talking about the key threats and challenges which is specific in the cloud computing, more than what we have in the on-premises. What specific threats we have in the cloud computing? That is the common threats which we have to understand. Then we have something called a security hygiene. What is security hygiene? Like basically when you go to this is basically again part of domain 3 and 5. So where we talk about the criticality of why we are doing a regular patching and baselining and configuration management. That's actually a very important topic to keep in mind. Okay, we'll discuss that in the domain 3 and domain 5. Okay, team. So moving on to the next one. So then we have something called as understanding design principles of secure cloud computing. So again, team, I will tell you one very critical topic for the examination, which is called as a cloud data lifecycle. So basically, when handling data, okay, from creating a data to deleting the data go through a cycle, a series of operations like create, store, use, share, archive, destroy. Like this, there is a life cycle for the data. So you should be very clear with the data lifecycle. So what is happening to the data in each phase, who is able to access the data, what location it's processed. So it's very important for you to understand what is happening in the each phase of the cloud data lifecycle. I will give you a simple mnemonic for that, which is basically called as CSUSAD. Okay, it's a in short, it's called as CS. So create, store, use, share, archive, destroy. So you should be aware of this particular thing because this is a very critical topic you have to keep in mind because it covers the entire data life cycle. That means what happens when you create data? What are the critical activities you have to perform while creating data? Like that. The same topic is there in domain 2 as well. So actually, it's a again very important. Okay, then you have to basically understand the concept of what is a BCDR. Again, it's coming in domain 3 as well. So BCDR means that what is BCDR specific to cloud computing? Definitely BCDR concepts are very important, and especially that terminologies like RTO, RPO, WRT, MTD, those kind of BCDR terminologies are very important. Plus, you should also understand the concept of how BCDR can be helpful or challenging in the cloud computing. That's a very important thing. Then, what are the key factors which we need for ensuring the proper BCDS strategy? Right, like that. Then the next thing is again, all the other things also we're basically having in the same this domain, all domain 3, I mean domain 4 application security as well, like that. And finally, team, the topic is basically what we call as a evaluating cloud service providers. Basically, if you want to evaluate the cloud service providers, obviously you go for certifications and standards. And it's about this, especially you have to focus more on the FIPS standard. It's very important when talking about hardware-based crypto processing HSM devices. You have to always think key management. You have to think about the standard called as FIPS 1400-2 or 2 and 3, very important for sure. Also, you have to understand the standard called as ISO 27017 and 27018. So what is 27017? So it's basically provides a guideline for the information security controls for cloud. 27017 is talking about guidelines for information security controls for cloud, and 27018 is basically about securing data on the cloud, right? Like that. We are touching every concept from multiple domains, right? Law, legal things, compliant things, risk and challenges, application challenges. See, a lot of things are there, right? So that's why I'm saying this domain takes more time for you to prepare. So team, let's move on to the domain 2, which is the cloud data security domain. Again, you may feel, Krish, this is the domain which I see the most weightage. But as I told you, don't think about the weightage here. Actually, 20% weightage is there, but don't think about the weightage. More than weightage, this is very important domain. Okay. Again, the first topic of the data lifecycle is, or data security is data lifecycle. As I told you before, what is the keyword to remember? Data lifecycle, CSUSAD. Yes, CS: create, store, use, share, archive, destroy. Be clear with every phase of that. You don't have to memorize the whole story, but the CCSP CB case gives you a very beautiful note on that. You can review that if you need. That's a very important thing. That's a very important thing to understand, and understand in each layer of the cloud data lifecycle what all activities are happening, what devices are involved, what tools are used. For example, let's say if I'm using something called as a DLP or DRM, it's basically in the use and share phases there. Like that, multiple phases use that. Then the next thing is that we have a concept called as data dispersion. So i- i- team, please, yeah, you may find this particular relevant actually. Okay, but basically what happens is that when you basically go for the concept of data dispersion, okay, the primary thing is all about, let's say now, you heard of the concept of RAID, right? It's a on-premises concept which is there for a long time. Redundant array of independent disk. The same RAID concept in the on-premises, on the cloud, is called as data dispersion. The same RAID concept in the cloud is what we call as a data dispersion. But it would be better if you basically learn two concepts as a part of it, which is called as bit splitting. And the second thing is erasure coding. So you can just review this. I'm not going into this detail, but you can just go through this. Okay. So when learning the concept of data dispersion, you should be aware of the concept of bit splitting, and you should be aware of the concept of erasure coding. Just go through that when you get time. I'm not going in detail. Just go through it when you get time. Okay. Very simple. And again, how the data flow in the cloud. Basically, that's the part of this entire data lifecycle phase. So it's easy to learn. Okay. So from this, I would prefer you clearly focus on lifecycle phases in a proper manner, plus understand the concept of RAID in cloud, that is data dispersion, erasure coding, and bit splitting. Okay. Then the next one, again, assured in the exam, which is basically very important, called as storage types. So basically now, when you basically go to the on-premises, you have a storage like hard disk, you have a storage like SSD, etc. But when you go to cloud, do they have something magical? In the on-premises, we have a NAS, we have a DAS, we have a SAN, like this, we have a different storage. But when you go to cloud, what they have? The same thing. They also use the same thing, but provided to you in the form of a service. Okay, provided to you in the form of a service. So what you have to do is that when learning this particular topic in the examination, you have to learn it for each cloud service model. Okay, for each cloud service model, what are the different kind of storages we are having? For example, if you go for IaaS, you have something called as a volume storage, object storage, then you have a ephemeral storage, then you have a what is that, like archive data long-term storage. That means you have different type of storages there. If you go for PaaS, you have different types. So just go through the different type of storage we are having when talking about the different service models. But one thing to keep in mind, when you basically go for cloud service models and storage types, for that, understand that IaaS is there. We have IaaS type of storages. PaaS is there. PaaS is built on top of what? PaaS is built on top of IaaS. So PaaS storage means that it's the same IaaS only, but given to you with lesser control, like that. Okay. So understand the storage types. You may get use cases, which is very important for you to understand. So understand the different types of storages you use in the cloud platform. Okay, I have seen many people ask me, Krish, in tech multiple textbooks, we are seeing multiple things there. Like in textbook number one, we have a different type of storage. In textbook number two, again, they confuse the storage. So which one I would refer? So team, what I prefer is that when you basically go for the textbook, the better thing is to make sure you always use the CBK. In the CBK, they have clearly mentioned about the different type of storage we need. That's enough. Okay. Then the next thing is basically what? The next thing is basically about the threats to storage type. So basically, when you go to cloud computing, there are various threats which can possibly happen for storage, like ransomware attacks, like unauthorized usage and access, DDoS attacks. Like this, there's a lot of threats which can possibly happen for the cloud. So just walk through that. You don't have to go in depth on everything and understand. Just walk through the common threats which can basically happen for the cloud storage types. Okay, now this is how the domain goes. So in this part, you will understand the type of storage in the cloud and what are the possible threats which can happen in the cloud. Once you learn the possible threats which can happen in the cloud, next you're going to learn about how can we mitigate it. What are the controls we have in cloud for mitigating it? Okay. Again, in when I talk about this, when people to ask me, Krish, in CISSP, I learned about a lot of encryption stuff. Do I have to learn the same thing in CCSP as well? So what I'm saying is that, team, when you go for CISSP, you're learning a lot of encryption stuff and all, but in CCSP, okay, CCSP is all about what? CCSP is all about you are not actually going in depth on every encryption things, but understand what are the different kind of encryption for the cloud, like client side encryption, server side encryption, application level encryption, like internal key management, external key management, like that. You have to understand where we. So I will give you an easy way to remember. Whenever you basically learn about this, okay, whenever you learn about the different kind of encryption or encryption methodologies, you should learn about where is my encryption algorithm, the location of the encryption algorithm, in what is it in the on-premises, is it in the cloud, is it my server, is it my proxy server? So where is my encryption algorithm located in each kind of encryption? Where is the key file located? Who is having control over key file? Like that, you have to understand. So more than understanding everything in depth and taking a lot of time on that, you should basically learn about the location of each of these things. The process you have to quickly understand, but not in depth like CISSP. Like in CISSP, we learn it in a much more deeper way, right? You don't have to bother about that level, because here you're not going to learn about every kind of AES 256 or everything like that. But here, just has to understand, okay, what is this concept? That's all. You have to just understand how the cloud, in how it be done in the cloud. That's all. Okay, that's the first thing. In fact, I would say this is a very important topic because I have seen many much questions in the examination on this. Okay, I'm not saying because I can't say about the examination, but I'm saying that I have seen from the feedbacks there may be a lot of topics which may be coming in the exam on encryption. So it's a very important thing for you to learn the encryption part. Then the most important thing is hashing. Obviously, hashing is a kind of one-way encryption. So, team, you have to understand what is the primary goal of hashing. Is it confidentiality or integrity? Integrity. So, understand the integrity is the most important thing. Then you have to understand basically encryption is there in you can use encryption for different cloud platforms, different locations, and all, but it may not work as expected in every environments. So, what we have to do, we have to basically go for something called as a masking. Sometimes you may not be able to implement encryption due to some technical or other challenges, or you will not do that because of complexity and all. So you have to go for masking, concept masking and anonymization. Okay, that's a very important concept. Masking and anonymization is very important to understand. Then we have a concept of tokenization with the payment tokenization. Understand the flow, very important. So why, first of all, you understand why tokenization is basically very important. Okay, why tokenization is very important for us. Like in the sense means when you basically talk about the word called as tokenization, why we go for it? Like what is the benefit we get from that? We don't have to actually take the entire data through the network. Again, increasing the complexity, increasing security and all. We can just convert it to token, makes the process more easier, saves more time and security. So understand the concept of tokenization and which standard you will remember when talking about tokenization. Which standard you will remember when talking about tokenization, team? PCI DSS. You have to remember the concept of PCI DSS. So I would recommend you go through the 12 controls. You don't have to memorize everything in detail, but at least one time, if you can go through the 12 PCI DSS controls, that would be helpful for the examination. Okay, that's a very important thing. PCI DSS is very important to understand. Then DLP. So DLP is one of the most important topics you have to learn when talking about the cloud computing. Let me tell you why. Now, you have a cloud, okay, and you have a data in the cloud platform. Now, when talking about protecting data in the cloud platform, we have encryption, we have access control, we have all these things, but these are having a limitation. I want to talk about understand who access it, when access it, who should be allowed, who should be denied, what should be done, what should not be done. So if you want to have a complete overall control of data, one major control which can help you is basically the DLP tools. So here you should understand the concept of DLP, but more than understanding DLP concept, it's very important. More than understanding DLP concept, you should learn about the concept of how DLP is applicable for cloud. Like when you say going to cloud, so basically it's very important to understand the phases of DLP implementation, very important. Understand who is responsible for DLP implementation, then understand how cloud can help you, whether like how the cloud can bring challenges. Like for example, let's say you have on-premises DLP. Can I basically take it to the cloud platform? Can I basically keep it in on-premises? So again, those kind of things you have to be very aware. Then understand what is the best place for storing the key files, secrets. So what is secret? Like basically what happens, team? When talking about the secrets management, okay, I want to make sure I'm able to store my secrets in a proper way. Again, what are the, like, I should be able to properly rotate it. I should be able to have a proper integration with the various cloud service and all. And in fact, there's a lot of tools in the market, right? AWS Secrets Manager, Azure Key Vault, a lot of things are there like that. Okay. So instead of basically sending the entire data, I'm converting this actual data into a small piece of thing called as token. Like I'll give an example. You go to a supermarket, you basically park your car in the car valet. So now what you'll get, they will give you a piece of paper, right? This is called as a token. That's a reference. Like the same way, instead of sending your actual data over the network, or instead of sending your actual credit card data over the network, you're converting that to a small token, which is basically having a time to live value. So it's basically more secure like that. Then the next thing is the team. We have to understand the concept of discovery and classification. Okay, discovery and classification. Now, I would say why this is most important. See, you're saying you want to protect your data. Okay, you're saying that you want to protect your data. But okay, can I protect every piece of data the same way? First of all, you should understand which one is more critical for us, which one should be having more sensitivity, which one should I focus on more. So that's very important. Data classification, very important. First of all, you have to understand the difference between structured, unstructured, and semi-structured data. Very important to understand the difference between structured, unstructured, and semi-structured data. For example, let's say the data which is basically organized in a row and column format. Like for example, we have a data here, which is basically organized in a row and column format. What is this? This is called as a structured data. Now, when talking about unstructured, like what do you mean by the music, PDF files, or notepads, text? That's unstructured data. Yeah, raw logs and all. What is semi-structured? Where you have a format, but not row and column. Like for example, JSON. Like I have a opening back, closing back, HTML,
XML.
JSON, XML. Those are semi-structured. Understand the difference and why it is important for us to have a location of data. So, team, by this time, I also want to tell you that there is two concepts: location of data, like data residency and data sovereignty. Residency means where is my data located, or regarding location of data, and sovereignty means laws applicable for data. Very important. Okay, just for understanding. Residency means where is my data located, or the location of my data, and sovereignty means where should the or what laws should be applicable for it, like that. Then understand the concept of the process of discovery and classification. So always keep in mind, classification is a very important thing to understand, because you should understand that if you misclassify data, if you improperly classify data, it can lead to poor security control. So it's a very important thing to have a proper classification. Either cloud or on premises, you should have a proper classification. The next one is basically all about what, team? The next one is basically about the IRM. Okay, IRM. So basically, when talking about IRM, what happens there, team? See, you have a concept of DLP. Now, DLP is basically something limited within your organization. What happens your data, whatever, even if you have access control and whatever it is, once the data left your company premises, so let's say, for example, I'm sending an email to you. My data is out already. I'm sending the data out of my business. Once the data is out of your business, you don't have any control, right? So that tool which will help you, even if the data is out of your business or out of your business unit or business boundary, is called as a DRM or IRM. The enterprise level DRM is called as an IRM. So it's a very important thing to understand how DRM can help you or IRM can help you. Okay, that's a very interesting thing. And always keep in mind, team, when talking about security, we have an approach called as a defense in depth approach. I hope you remember that. When talking about security, we have an approach called as a defense in depth approach. What is a defense in depth approach? It means that we have when you basically go for a cloud platform, okay, defense in depth or on premise, it means that for any control which is directly addressing a threat, there should be a compensatory control. Don't forget, for any control which is directly addressing a threat, there should be a compensatory control or backup control to catch the failure of the first one. Okay. And when talking about that particular perspective, when you have the primary control is DLP, if the DLP fails, what is the next level of control we are having? The DLP fails, the next level of control we are having is what we call as a DRM or IRM. Yep, very important to understand. Now, when talking about data, it is very important for us, okay, it is very important for us to basically ensure about multiple factors on handling data. Okay, we should be aware about multiple factors about handling data. And that multiple factors we should have about handling data is basically talking basically about retention policy and all these things. What is retention policy, team? Retention policy is primarily about how long we have to keep our data, but it's not just only about how long, but primarily speaking, the retention policy is a established protocol of organization to decide based on various factors how long we will keep our data, on what level of controls, on what variations, on what security controls, how we will keep it, on what kind of storage. That's a retention policy. Okay. And always keep in mind, data should be kept only for what? Data should be kept only for
Legal
the
issues.
proper duration, only for the proper duration, and it should not be for more than that. So data should be kept only for the exact duration, and it should not be kept for more than that. Again, that feels very simple, but understand that, team, data should be kept only for a proper duration, and it should not be taken or done for more than that duration. That's a very important thing. Then second thing is the team, data deletion. What is the most effective way to remove data in the cloud or in the cloud platform? Crypto shredding. So basically, that is very important thing. So when you say deleting data, team, always keep in mind deleting data is all about making sure you're removing the data without any remnants, without any trace of recovery. That's a best thing is going for crypto shredding or cryptographic erasure. There is a concept of archiving. So team, what is the primary purpose of archiving? Why we are keeping your data for a long time is the cost. Basically, if you go for archival storage, cost is a major benefit you get right. So always keep in mind, cost is a major benefit or major reason why we are keeping your data for a long time. Okay. So that's a archival. So I want to keep my data in a long-term storage to reduce my cost. That's a archival storage. Most important thing to understand. Then legal hold. What is a legal hold, team? When you basically talk about the word called as legal hold, okay, it's also called as legal hold, litigation hold. What is that? Preservation order. So due to some legal activity, I may have to keep a particular set of data without any changes or anything. We have to keep it in a proper preservation manner until the litigation is over. This is basically given by the court of law primarily. Once you get a notification regarding the legal hold, you should keep your data in a proper way and it should not be modified or deleted until unless the court orders you to do so, like that. Okay. So this is basically the one of the most important topics you have to learn in this team. Especially, I would say that whatever we discussed till now, this domain is very important. I'm not saying one topic is important or another, but very important. Almost every topic is important, but focus on the critical things I told you, like that. Yep. Then the next thing is that next thing is that when talking about data, okay, there is one more thing called as auditability and traceability. Because when you say you have events like logs and other events you have in the cloud platform, what are the different sources of events you get in the cloud? Okay. Now, like for example, network logs, application logs, management console logs, like you have different logs and all, and various activities happening. That's all called as events, right? So from where you get the different kind of events in the cloud platform, and what are the factors we have to consider when filtering the events or managing the events and all, and what is the criticality of going for storing the log files for a particular amount of time, and what level of control you have regarding that, because you can't get OS logs and PAS, right? If you talk about the generic PAS definition, you'll not be able to get the proper amount of logs in the PAS, right, like that. Then the last thing is most important, chain of custody and non-repudiation. See, chain of custody means what? So when, let's say, for example, you are collecting a log file or you're collecting evidence, from the point you're collecting an evidence to the point you're presenting it to the court of law, okay, it should be properly stored it should be in safe custody. That's called as a chain of custody. And what is non-repudiation? A person cannot deny his action. there should be someone accountable for activities called as non-repudiation. Okay, like that. Perfect. Cloud platform and infra security. See, when I discuss this domain, I would always say that this domain is more from a cloud provider's perspective. Like again, like how they are handling their infrastructure of the cloud, underlying infra of the cloud service provider, and how they are managing it, their data center, and all those stuff like that. Okay. Now, in this domain, obviously the first thing, how the cloud is built. See, remember domain when we started this? That's why I'm telling you this is very important here. So domain 3 is all about the cloud service provider. And the first part is basically where we talk about comprehending the cloud infrastructure and platform components. Okay. So like again, what are the different components which build the cloud platform, like the physical environment, like network communication, see how they are basically handling the CPU and memory. Then the virtualization, the types of virtualization, as I told you, it's coming in multiple domains. See, storage, how management plane, and management plane is very important because always keep in mind, team, when you go to a cloud platform, one of the major risk introduced by the cloud is the cloud management console, because the cloud management console may act as a single point of failure, right? The cloud management console may act as a single point of failure, right? Due to some reason, if the underlying if the underlying like for example, we have a cloud platform and we have a lot of data in the cloud platform. So what can happen? The management plane get compromised, everything is gone, right? So it is very important for us to secure the management plane. You should be aware of the various security challenges of the management plane and the virtualization. It is most important for you to understand, and especially understand that the 100% control of the hypervisor software used for virtualization of the cloud service provider. But still, you have to understand this. Okay. And management plane is a shared responsibility. The next thing is that, team, whenever we are basically going for a cloud service provider should have the locations, right? We call as regions and data centers, right? So how do they build their data centers? So for a cloud service provider, one major thing is that they should build the data center in a proper way, which is basically what we call as a uh, physical and logical design. So basically, when you understand that physical, so basically, what is the difference in physical and logical design? Logical design is about what are the factors behind designing those data centers, like what are the things I am expecting from this data center, like the structural approach, the plan, how many, what kind of customers I'm trying to support, what are the different methodologies I'm trying to use, what kind of services I'm planning to provide. That's a logical design. And based on that, I will build the data center. When I say building data center, you have to understand the location of data center is very important, because you should build data centers in a place where you have the proper facilities for power, medical facilities and everything. Also, there should be there should be a proper optimal temperature. So when building data centers, you should be always aware that it's not just about building it in the coldest place or hottest place. It should be where you should have a proper balance between the temperature and humidity, because if you have a high humidity, it can lead to corrosion. If you have a low humidity, it can lead to static electricity. So understand that identifying the location and the environment is also very important. And most important thing, team, when you basically build data center, one major thing is all about what? Having a proper resilient infrastructure. That means what? So redundancy is very important. For example, let's say now the how much redundant you can become a data center, how much more you're able to make things duplicated. Like for example, let's say you have a server, you have a backup server, you have a cooling, you have a backup cooling, like that. That would be more better actually, like that. Okay. And there are multiple standards as a part of this. And one major standard for your examination preparation is basically the Uptime Institute standard. I repeat, one major standard is basically what we call as a Uptime Institute standard. You can just note down if you want. I'll write down here. Even though there are multiple standards you have to learn from here in this particular domain, but one major standard is Uptime Institute TS, Uptime Institute. So as per the Uptime Institute, you are having total 4 tiers for data center. Tier 1 data center, tier 2, tier 3, and tier 4. You have 4 type of data centers or 4 tiers of data center. You should basically have a awareness of what is the availability percentage in each tiers and what are the simple differences. Okay. It's very important for you to understand. I'm not saying that you have to master it everything, but you have to just go through it. And the best reference I found for this Uptime Institute, okay, is basically the website only. I can show you an example for this website. If you want to learn about the Uptime Institute tiers, I will not suggest any other documents. Just go through this particular page. This will cover everything. You see, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. It's a really good thing. Okay. Okay, it's a very important thing to understand. So you should basically make sure that you go through that tier classification system, that it helps you a lot to understand the concepts thoroughly. And like, again, what each tier will do, like, that's very important. Okay, plus the availability and all. So team, the next one is that team, when talking about cloud computing, as I discussed, the we should be aware of the various top risk specific in cloud computing, like basically the factors, like for example, how to identify the various risk in cloud computing. This is actually very important. As I told you, you should review the top threats in cloud computing 2024 document. That's a really good thing. But what I'm trying to say is that when talking about a cloud infrastructure, having a proper understanding of the various threats and vulnerabilities which can possibly happen is very important for us, because that document covers a lot of things. I love that document a lot. It's really good to understand. Now now the next thing is that how they are basically protecting all these things. When you go for building a data center, how the cloud service provider is basically having proper protection for all these things, and how they are basically collecting the log files and managing it efficiently for that. Like, this is the same thing we have discussed, okay, before only. And finally, most important team, I would say that this is one of the top important topics in domain 3. This is talking about the BCDR. So what I'm trying to convey is that when talking about the BCDR as a cloud service customer, okay, it's basically, again, both of us have a concern. Provider and have a concern, and consumer have a concern as well. But as a consumer and provider perspective, BCDR is a biggest factor, because at the end of the day, you are doing all these things, going to cloud, doing all these things to ensure your business can run smoothly. So understand the concept of what is a BCDR. BC is the ability to continue operation even in case of a disaster, and is a DR is basically a capability to recover from a failure, right? Like that.